2030 तक हम डेजर्टिफिकेशन को रोक पाएंगे। नेचुरल होगा, लेकिन मैन मेड, ह्यूमन मेड डेजर्टिफिकेशन न हो, इसके लिए और हम यही कामना करते हैं कि जो ये डिसीजन लिए जा रहे हैं, निर्णय लिए जा रहे हैं, ये इम्प्लीमेंट भी किए जाएंगे। और हमारे प्लान्स प्रोग्राम, हमारे मतलब सारी दुनिया के प्लान्स एंड प्रोग्राम में ये आएंगे और इकोलॉजी को प्रायोरिटी दी जाएगी, इकोनॉमी को।
Mr. Pandey, Prime Minister Modi has just arrived there at the venue in Greater Noida in Uttar Pradesh, accompanied by the Environment Minister Prakash Javadekar. Of course, Prime Minister Modi will be addressing shortly that opening ceremony of the high-level segment of the COP14, which is being hosted by India, and also, in fact, India has assumed the presidency of the COP from China. Important address that is going to be by Prime Minister Modi, who will in fact lay out the blueprint, the vision that that's required for combating land desertification and degradation, achieving the land degradation neutrality by 2030 by India and the rest of the member nations. In fact, this 12-day conference is witnessing participation of as many as 196 countries with over 5,000 participants from across the globe. And the challenge that's in front of them is to finding viable solutions to the challenge of increasing land degradation, desertification, and also drought, which is in fact affecting in great numbers the food production as well. That very important aspect, apart from affecting environment adversely.
बिल्कुल, और प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी पहुंच चुके हैं इस वक्त ग्रेटर नोएडा के इंडिया सेंटर में, जहां पे एक्सपो मार्ट में, जहां पर ये सम्मेलन हो रहा है। और अब से कुछ ही देर में उनका संबोधन हम सबको सुनने को मिलेगा। ये सुनने को मिलेगा कि भारत क्या कुछ संकल्प ले रहा है, क्या कुछ घोषणाएं होंगी, प्रधानमंत्री को सुनना। और खास तौर पर ऐसे समय में जब ये बात हो रही है कि पर्यावरण को संरक्षित करना सबसे ज्यादा जरूरी है। और अब जैसा कि अभी मिस्टर पांडे ने कहा कि वी हैव बीन पुश्ड टू द वॉल, तो ऐसी सिचुएशन तक आ गए हैं कि जहां से अब जिसको कहते हैं कि गले तक पानी में डूबे हुए हैं। अब इसके बाद कोई और स्थिति ऐसी बचती नहीं है जहां से आप वापस आने के लिए प्रयास ना करें। मुझे याद आ रहा है कि मैंने बहुत पहले फणीश्वर नाथ रेणु की एक किताब पढ़ी थी, परती परिकथा, जिसमें उन्होंने लिखा था कि धूसर वीरान अंतहीन प्रांतर, पतिता भूमि परती जमीन बंध्या धरती, धरती नहीं धरती की लाश जिस पर चारों तरफ फैली हुई हैं बालूचरों की पंक्तियां। और फिर वहां से वापस लौट करके आए और देखा कि वो जो धरती थी वो शस्य श्यामला हो गई। हमारे साथ में हमारे संवाददाता अरुण शर्मा हमारे साथ बने हुए हैं। और अरुण, आपसे हम यहीं से शुरू करेंगे जो हमने अभी उल्लेख किया कि धरती दोबारा शस्य श्यामला बनाई जा सकती है और प्रधानमंत्री के उद्घोषणा की जरूरत लगती है।
बिल्कुल, उद्घोषणा की जरूरत इसलिए लगती है क्योंकि जब तक आपके सामने एक विजन ना हो तो जाहिर सी बात है मुश्किल से मुश्किल चैलेंज को अगर आपको पार करना है तो आपको एक विजन की जरूरत होती है। तो इंडिया बीइंग द वन ऑफ द मोस्ट पॉपुलस कंट्री इन द वर्ल्ड, सबसे ज्यादा जो फर्क पड़ता है या इम्पैक्ट होता है वो भारत जैसे देश को पड़ता है, एक डेवलपिंग कंट्री है। इसमें समय में अगर हमको डेजर्टिफिकेशन जिसकी हम लगातार बात कर रहे हैं कि मरुस्थल होने से रोकना है लैंड को, तो ये चैलेंजिंग जरूर है। लेकिन अगर हमें एक विजन मिल जाए तो जाहिर सी बात है इन चैलेंजेस को हम पूरा कर सकते हैं। जैसे ये दिल्ली डिक्लेरेशन अडॉप्ट होगा, ये एक तरह से उन तमाम कंट्रीज के लिए भी एक विजन होगा, क्योंकि लीडरशिप या प्रेसिडेंसी अगर भारत के पास है तो जो भारत जिस तरह से जो पॉलिसी मेकिंग में रहता है, जो भारत जो पॉलिसी निर्धारण करता है एनवायरमेंट को लेकर के, उसकी कहीं ना कहीं झलक आपको इस दिल्ली डिक्लेरेशन के अंदर देखने को मिल सकती है। तमाम जो देश अगर आप देखें जो इस के मेंबर नेशंस हैं, उसके बाद में जब वो अपनी खुद की पॉलिसीज बनाएंगे आगे जाते हुए, तो वो जो इस दिल्ली डिक्लेरेशन को अपने जहन में रखेंगे और जहां तक एनवायरमेंट कंट्रोल की बात आती है, डेजर्टिफिकेशन की बात आती है, वो अपनी अपनी जब पॉलिसीज देशों में जाकर के बनाएंगे तो वहां पे जाकर के इसको इंप्लीमेंट करने की पूरी कोशिश करेंगे। जाहिर सी बात है कई इंपॉर्टेंट चैलेंजेस इसके अंदर होते हैं, लेकिन जैसे कि आज हम वेट उसी चीज का कर रहे हैं, प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जब वो यहाँ पे संबोधन करेंगे, इस मेगा कॉन्फ्रेंस को जो वो संबोधन करेंगे और जो 190 से भी ज्यादा देशों से जो लोग यहाँ पे आए, जो इसके मेंबर कंट्रीज भी हैं, तो उनको कहीं ना कहीं विजन जरूर मिलेगा। ज्यादातर डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज यहाँ पर हैं जिनको बहुत ज्यादा जरूरत है इस विजन को लेकर के, चाहे वो टेक्नोलॉजिकली हो या फाइनेंशियली हो, इस चैलेंज को कैसे पूरा कर पाते हैं, ये हालांकि बात की बात है, लेकिन अगर एक विजन सामने हो तो काफी ज्यादा काम आसान हो जाता है वसुधा को हरी भरी रखने के अंदर, और शायद उसी के इंतजार और उसी की दरकार इस समय पर है।
बिल्कुल अरुण, और ये सीधी तस्वीरें इस वक्त हम ग्रेटर नोएडा के एक्सपो मार्ट से देख रहे हैं, इंडिया एक्सपो मार्ट से देख रहे हैं, और सबसे खास बात है कि प्रधानमंत्री जो यूएन के जो अधिकारी हैं वहां पर इस सम्मेलन में भाग लेने के लिए, शिरकत करने के लिए आए हुए हैं, उनके साथ में उनकी एक जिसको कहते हैं कि बैठक और एक छोटा सा मंथन, थोड़ी बातचीत वो चल रही है। और इसके बाद उम्मीद है कि प्रधानमंत्री का जो संबोधन है वो लगातार आज हम सबको मिल सकेगा, हम सब जान सकेंगे कि प्रधानमंत्री का इस पूरे विषय पर उनका क्या कुछ कहना है, भारत का क्या स्टेक है, भारत क्या कुछ कहना चाहता है।
Yes, absolutely. In fact, these visuals that we showed you were from a short while back when Prime Minister Modi, along with the Environment Minister Prakash Javadekar, had in fact was meeting with the UN officials. Those visuals, live visuals that were coming there from Greater Noida in Uttar Pradesh, where Prime Minister Modi met with the UN officials. All right, let's continue with the discussion with our guests present in the studio. Mr. Varshney, what are you anticipating? What expectations are you having from this convention? You know, because you have the environmentalists, policy makers, you know, deciding on a vision to combat degradation, desertification, important challenges that lie up ahead, and the very critical role that India will play.
I think India is going to play a very critical role in encouraging the member countries to really come out with the voluntary disclosure of the targets of desertification reversal. And this is very important, because if every country comes out with a kind of figure, then I think it is possible that back home after this conference they will be able to really make concrete plans and proposals and activities, and also really look for finances. And these are very important. At the same time, it is also very important for understand that there is a provision of land fund, desertification land fund, and for which I think $100 million have been already committed for, and this is a very special kind of fund, one of its own kind, where you will find that anthropological or these societies or philanthropical societies as well as the private institutions are really pooling this fund. So it's a blending of resources from many sources, and this is going to be available to individuals, entrepreneurs who will really deploy this. And for that, the fund name is Impact Fund, which means that it is going to not only be economically deployed for returning back the fund to the from where the loan has been taken, but at the same time it will have a very curative effect on the social and environmental aspect, and therefore this fund is very special and is known as. Now $100 million is not enough to really meet the challenge, because we require much larger, and I think here the countries are going to really work and think that how they can encourage the private entrepreneurs, the individual companies, NGOs, philanthropic organizations to come forward and contribute to this, which is going to really provide a kind of succor, which is very important to give a push or initial, I should say, ignite the process of converting deserts back into the fertile land. And I think these are some of the things which the conference so far must have debated upon, and I think countries are going to encourage to be encouraged to really come forward for their voluntary disclosure as to what kind of land degradation, convertibility or neutrality they are going to propose, because by 2030 India proposes that 50 million hectares they will be able to really convert back and recover from the degradation process of desertification. And I think this is something very, very encouraging. Similarly, other countries will also come forward. The more the commitments come, the better force it will be to really, as Pandeyji has said, that this is a lesser known convention. This convention will become increasingly important and will provide very, very helpful, I should say, cooperative encouragement to the biodiversity convention as well as to the climate change convention. Because once the land becomes fertile, it will start pulling carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and will start storing the carbon, which otherwise in the atmosphere creates the global warming. So I think that it will generate jobs, it will generate new livelihoods, and at the same time it will really also encourage biodiversity on this land, which otherwise remains barren without any biodiversity.
Sure.
And more than that, it will provide a great amount of water security help, because the vegetation is there, the biodiversity is there, and they help in conserving water.
तस्वीरें आप देख रहे हैं, वाशना साहब आपको एक मिनट रोकना चाहेंगे, अपने दर्शकों को बताएं कि ये सीधी तस्वीरें इस वक्त ग्रेटर नोएडा के इस वक्त वहाँ के इंडिया एक्सपो मार्ट से ये तस्वीरें हम देख रहे हैं। प्रधानमंत्री वहाँ पहुँच चुके हैं और इस सम्मेलन में शिरकत करने के लिए पहुँचे हैं। हमारे संवाददाता अरुण शर्मा वहाँ पर बने हैं, उनसे पहले जी नैन्सी।
Yes, we'll go to him in just a bit, but yes, you're seeing those live visuals. Prime Minister Modi there at the venue. He's going to be speaking shortly at the opening ceremony of the high-level segment at the COP14. Of course, he's accompanied by the Environment Minister Prakash Javadekar. Prime Minister Modi will be on the stage in just a bit, and in fact, you know, what we can see, Mr. Varshney, is that perhaps you know, a vision that will be laid out by India, because India has played a very critical role and will continue to play a very critical role as far as creating a balance between environment and development is concerned. Mr. Varshney, I'll take that comment from you in just a bit, but let's go across to our correspondent Arun Sharma, who is there in fact keeping a track of developments on that front. Arun, Prime Minister Modi going to be speaking shortly, and you know, we've been stressing on the role that India is likely to play on the global stage from here on as far as combating the challenge of land desertification and degradation is concerned, and you know, keeping with its pledge to achieving land degradation neutrality by 2030.
लगता है अरुण तक हमारी आवाज पहुंची नहीं, एक बार अपना सवाल फिर से दोहराएं। जी।
All right, we'll try and reconnect with the correspondent Arun Sharma in just a bit, but let me take that comment from Mr. Varshney. Mr. Varshney, how are you seeing you know, the pledge that has been taken by India as far as achieving land degradation neutrality by 2030 is concerned, because it's very important. It's one of the 17 sustainable development goals that has been set, of course, to transform the world through multiple actions.
You see that when you are talking of sustainable development goal, it is the goal number which is known as 15.3. which relates to the land resources, and this UNCCD is the custodian for this particular sustainable development goal. And I think it is in this context we have to see that it has a very serious ramification.
Bold and decisive and very empathetic and compassionate leadership, ladies and gentlemen. India is all ready to lead the land management agenda at the global level. We thank Honorable Prime Minister for leading the talks here. We also welcome here on the dais and really honored to have the presence of the Honorable Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. Ralph E. Gonzalez. We extend greetings to him and thank him for joining us. Honored to also have the Honorable Deputy Secretary General of United Nations, Excellency Ms. Amina Mohammed. Greetings to her. Honorable Executive Secretary, United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, Mr. Ibrahim Theo. The COP14 President, the Honorable Minister of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and also the Minister for Information and Broadcasting, Government of India, Mr. Prakash Javadekar ji. The Honorable Minister of State, Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Government of India, Mr. Babul Supriyo. And respected Secretary, Environment, Government of India, Mr. C.K. Mishra. And Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, also good greetings and a hearty welcome to all of you in this very important session, the high-level segment of COP14, as all of us come together. And in fact, if you see, this is a beginning of defining our resolve, our plan and action till the time we meet again the next 2 years with the next COP as we work towards adopting the Delhi Declaration at the end of this segment. And as it is the beginning, let's mark its auspicious inauguration as per the Indian traditions and customs by seeking the blessings of the Supreme Power, the blessings of Lord Ganesha, Vignaharta as we call him, and also the Lord of many happy new beginnings. So we begin with the Ganesh Vandana, and we have the artists from the Bureau of Outreach Communication, Song and Drama Division of the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting helping us commune with the Almighty. Ladies and gentlemen, infuse so much of energy in the air. Thank you to them. And may I now request the COP14 President, the Honorable Minister of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Government of India, Shri Prakash Javadekar ji, who as the Minister of Environment is championing India's environment strategy in all the three Rio Convention and thus linking land, climate and biodiversity to translate our Honorable Prime Minister's agenda of doubling the farmers' income by 2022 and India achieving its sustainable development goals and its indices. I request and invite the Honorable Minister for his welcome address.
Good morning, our esteemed Honorable Prime Minister of the world's largest democracy and who has been re-elected with a massive mandate, Mr. Narendra Modi ji, Prime Minister of St. Vincent, Ralph Gonsalves, my Minister of State colleague, Babul Supriyo, Deputy Secretary General, Amina Mohammed, UNCCD Executive Secretary, Igram Chow, our Secretary of the Climate, of the Environment Ministry, Mr. C.K. Mishra, ministers here who have come from world over, and delegates. I welcome you all in this beautiful city of Greater Noida, which is part of India's largest state, Uttar Pradesh, and which is part of National Capital Region also. So you are in both cities of Delhi and Greater Noida. And I welcome you all, and now for last 1 week, many delegates are here, and I hope that everything is well and you must be enjoying the whole ambience of this conference. This UNCCD COP14 is unique event. It's huge. More than 200 countries, 100 ministers, and more than 8,000 participants. It's all-time record for any COP. And so this is the basis of very exciting discussions which we are going through, and I'm very sure that you will definitely participate more in coming days. This logo of COP14 is a beautifully designed, very meaningful, and we crowdsourced it. One young, passionate environmentalist has come out with this unique design, and therefore we have made it, and you must have liked this. This shows the concern. Why this is huge? This shows the concern of the world for environment. In Rio, all the three conventions, UNFCCC, CBD, and UNCCD came into existence, and then we started a joint journey. The deliberations are rich, and will come out with appropriate and ambitious Delhi Declaration on the last day, that is tomorrow, which will ensure speedy restoration of degraded land for sustainable growth. UNFCCC, as I am Minister for Climate Change also, we were part of the Paris, but that's a global problem and requires global action and global solutions. And therefore, there are nuances, there are hard negotiations, and there are commitments which they go on commas and semicolon also. But this CBD, biodiversity, and UNCCD, combating desertification, have to be national goals and national action. So I saw more unity, learning from each other, and sharing best practices. So that's a difference between these three climate conferences. India's Prime Minister's commitment to sustainable development for environment to protect 5 elements, earth, sky or space, water, fire, air, is full and complete. I have seen him in action for the last 5 years. His role in Paris summit was a leading role. And when the penultimate day, there was no solution in sight. He all world leaders discussed, and he played an important role to arrive at an amicable solution. He put before the world two different concepts of lifestyle and climate justice. He came out with India's ambitious program of 175 gigawatts of renewable energy, which will be 40% of our energy capacity. So this was a huge step. World never believed, but we are already on the track, and we have created nearly half of our target of 175 gigawatt in renewable energies. That's huge. We have also, he has promoted Solar Alliance, those between Capricorn and Cancer. All the countries have been brought together, and the Solar Alliance is working fine. We have this time, no country has done this, but we have levied a tax on coal production at the rate of $6. Many countries in the world say, oh, it is impossible. I said in India, it is not impossible. We have 36 parties in parliament, and still this was unanimously done because our Prime Minister is a decisive leader, and the money so generated, we are using for climate actions. We have promoted e-vehicles by offering various taxation concessions. We have also, he has now, in this Modi's government's 2.0, which has started 3 months ago, has established a water resources ministry, and this has to brought water. He has, when he was chief minister, he has brought water of Narendra river to the past land of Kutch, and now that is land restored. It's an actual combating desertification. And in desert, it's not only dates. In Kutch desert, we are having mangoes and dragon fruit also successfully exported throughout the world. So this is how we are already on the track of combating desertification. Green cover is rising in India. We have 24%, but in last 5 years, we have increased by nearly 15,000 square kilometers, and we are inching towards our target of having 33% cover. Last month, he declared the results of tiger census, and those tiger census, which is the epitome of our ecology, which is certification of your good ecology. And that is, now we have world's 77% of wild tigers, 2,967. That is the figure which he was welcomed by the world over. And last month also, you must have seen, many of you, he's on Discovery Channel, he's with Bear Grylls, the way he went into jungles, the dialogues and all the efforts were to reinforce his basic commitment to the environment, cause of environment. Lastly, I'll only say that next 2 years, India is the COP presidency, and we will work with all of you. I can assure that we will, if human actions have done damage to the world environment, now positive human actions will make a difference and will give a better earth for the future generation. Thank you and welcome again.
Thank you, Honourable Minister, sir, for highlighting the various initiatives which India is taking under the leadership of Honourable Prime Minister Modi towards ensuring a growth which is resource-oriented, environmentally sustainable and equitable, taking care of our flora and fauna. And our next speaker, ladies and gentlemen, is a man of a vision and determination who has almost more than 40 years of extensive experience towards environmental governance and also the management of natural resources and sustainable development. In fact, he advanced the recalibration of the United Nations Integrated Strategy for the Sahel as a special advisor to the Secretary General for Sahel. He also served as the Assistant Secretary General and the Deputy Executive Director of the United Nations Environment Program, where he was instrumental in shaping the organization's strategic vision and the mandate. The personality in expression, ladies and gentlemen, is Excellency Mr. Ibrahim Theo, the Executive Secretary of UNCCD, whom I now request to kindly address this august gathering. He, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be speaking in French and English, so you can use your headsets. Thank you.
Excellences, Monsieur le Premier Ministre de la République d'Inde,
Prime Minister of the Republic of India,
Narendra Modi,
Mr. Narendra Modi. No country other than India would have been better placed to host this 14th Conference of the Parties. This conference is a pivotal one, for it is taking place at the Silver Jubilee celebration of the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, and it is also placed with a view to the 2050 horizon. India, this incredible country, is the junction between tradition arising from rich civilizations and modernity, characterized by innovative technological progress, the information superhighways, the wonder of Bollywood, Bangalore, or even the plans for intelligent cities in Chandigarh, Nagpur, or Pondicherry. India is a country of diversity, a country with many facets. It is just as much a country of biodiversity as it is a country with arid lands. It is just as much a country of resilience as a country that refuses to accept the fates. India is a country with hospitable people, where in the streets people welcome you spontaneously with a smile on their face, their lips saying Svadgay. Excellency Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Ms. Amina Mohammed, Vice Secretary General of the United Nations, ministers, in particular the Chair of the COP13, Your Excellency Jean Violon, Minister from China, distinguished heads of agencies represented here this morning, in particular the Administrator of the United Nations Development Program, the Executive Director for the United Nations Development Program, the Executive Director of the Global Environment Facility, the Executive Director of the Green Climate Fund, my dear colleague, Executive Secretary of the Convention of Biological Diversity, Mr. Ovais Ahmad, Deputy Executive Secretary of the Convention on Climate, Sir Rene Caster-Salazar, Assistant Director General of the FAO, dear colleags from the United Nations, Distinguished Minister of the Environment, Forest and Climate Change of India, Mr. Prakash Javadekar, thank you for being here with your team and for being such a hospitable host. We have, through your hospitality, welcomed over 1,500 participants, and never before has a COP for the UNCCD hosted as many delegates and world leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask you kindly to join me in expressing our gratitude to the Republic of India.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the UNCCD staff in Bonn recently celebrated the arrival of the newest member of the Secretariat's family. Our colleague Omer and his wife Bashak had just welcomed their newly born Daphne into the world. For sure, the two parents will do their utmost to ensure a bright future for Daphne. Yet, the future of a child is not in the hands of the parents alone, but of humanity at large. This reminds me of Kofi Annan's Nobel lecture, where he reflected on the life ahead for a young girl born in Afghanistan on that day. It wasn't a future any one of us would want for a child. A life centuries rather than miles away from her peer group in wealthy nations. And nearly 20 years later, I am not sure the outlook has really changed. So given our 25 years anniversary theme of growing the future together, it made me wonder, what can we achieve today to justify their confidence in us, to ensure that 25 years from now, the children born today will see their families growing up in a safe, prosperous, and equitable society, where that young girl is a reminder of how far we have come, not how far we have to go. There is no escaping the powerful timing of this COP. On one hand, we have just had the IPCC report laying out the science of why the connections between land, climate, and biodiversity can either threaten or strengthen human well-being. On the other hand, we are just about to have the 5 UN summits in New York, laying out options to get back on target for climate change and the Sustainable Development Goals. So the agreements we reach here about how to restore, protect, and manage our land on a massive scale, and how to trigger a seismic shift in private sector partnerships to make it happen, can immediately help ramp up the ambition of action plans for everyone involved. As land is one of the biggest carbon sinks available, we must use this window of opportunity to make more stakeholders realize that even beyond a financial return of as much as 30-to-1 for restoration, or social returns for millions of jobs in energy, technology, tourism, or agriculture, any investment in land creates a whole range of spillover benefits to fuel that cycle. For example, restoring 350 million hectares of degraded land by 2030 could generate up to $9 trillion in ecosystem services and sequester up to 26 gigatons of greenhouse gases. Nice numbers, but what do they actually mean for people around the world? For herders and on the rangelands of Jordan and Egypt, they mean reinstating traditional land management that stabilizes incomes and reduces conflicts. For tea growers in Vietnam, China, India, and Sri Lanka, they mean using natural fertilization and pest control to transform their plantations from red stumps to robust yields. For rice farmers in Madagascar, they mean swapping slash and burn monoculture for a basket of techniques that could see their crops diversify and grow by 40%. And for ranchers in the tropical Andes, they mean using pasture rotation, biogas, and water systems to improve the health of the meadows, the biodiversity, and the cattle, even doubling their milk production. What's more, all these projects have three things in common. First, women are equally involved in the decisions, implementation, and benefits, whether that's through greater financial security, stronger land rights, new skills, or simply not having to work for hours to get water. Second, those examples are all projects of the Global Environmental Facility that are being delivered through partnerships with governments, NGOs, scientists, local communities, and our sister agencies across the United Nations. And third, leveraging that inclusive and collaborative approach will see both the reach and the pace of change scaled up dramatically, especially if we can align them with some of the ambitious cooperation programs already taking root, such as the Initiative 2020 in Latin America and the Caribbean, the Great Green Wall of Africa, or the Green Belts of China and India, to name just a few. Ladies and gentlemen, combining our land with those three little concepts of equality, partnerships, and scale could take us a very long way towards our common goals. Just a year into this century, Kofi Annan's remarks acknowledged that we were already violently disabused of any hopes that progress towards global peace and prosperity is inevitable. When he asked us to confront it, we nodded, applauded, and carried on as before. So by the time that young girl he spoke of reached her teens, we had degraded over a fifth of our land, putting climate change and poverty on a fast track with inequality everywhere, from jobs and security to health and education. Daphne is the newest member of the UNCCD family, so I'm sure you understand why we are a little protective of her future. In fact, With 250 babies born every minute in the world, I know that each one of you feels the same about someone, somewhere. That we all want to see them growing together in a world where every child has an equal chance, and that every investment in land will unlock opportunities to bring that world closer to reality, which is why I also know we will ensure this COP makes global peace and prosperity more achievable, if not yet inevitable. Perhaps making it inevitable can be our challenge for next time. Bahut Denavad. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your message and also reminding us that each one of us have a greater responsibility for someone, somewhere, and towards creating a planet and a growth which is more equitable and sustainable. Thank you so very much. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to request our next speaker, who earlier as the Environment Minister of Nigeria has played a very important role towards Nigeria's efforts on climate action and on sustainable development. Prior to this, she's also been the Special Advisor to the then Secretary General of United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, on the post-2015 development agenda, and she has been instrumental in bringing in the 2030 agenda for sustainable development and the Sustainable Development Goals. Presently, ladies and gentlemen, she is in the most coveted position of the Deputy Secretary General of United Nations. It's my pleasure to be inviting and requesting Excellency Ms. Amina J. Mohammed to kindly address this August gathering.
Your Excellency Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Your Excellency Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves, Excellencies, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, and special recognition to the young people who would be watching or who are in the audience. My deep appreciation to the Government of India for hosting this conference, and in particular to Prime Minister Modi for his vision and his leadership. To the Executive Secretary, my brother Ibrahim Tio, for the opportunity to highlight the unprecedented expectations on your work here. These times are not normal, and they are critical. And we need to start a massive effort to take the solutions that we are discussing here today to scale, to move beyond the negotiation and the planning to action and impact individually and collectively at the country level. We've already used a third of our time frame to deliver on the 2030 agenda, and we've just 2 weeks to galvanize the urgent action ahead of the summits in New York. And we have the 3 inextricably linked Rio Conventions on land, biodiversity, and climate, which were created to trigger that action, but are still not reaching their full potential. The latest scientific data shows that the massive effort is painfully overdue. 1/4 of our greenhouse gas emissions come from land degradation. 1 million species face extinction, threatening ecosystems that provide everything that we eat, we drink, and we breathe. And the lives of half of our people on this planet are affected by desertification, land degradation, and drought. What's worse is that the unhealthier our land becomes, the more dangerous the implications will be for all of us. So we can't really afford to ignore that the loss of land and ecosystem services shrinks GDP by 10% a year, nor can we ignore the increases of the likelihood of violent conflict or forced migration that affects mostly our women and our children. And those risks, with millions of people already feeling the effect, are spreading across the planet. From the dip in Germany's industrial output because drought hit the Rhine shipping last year, to the soil loss costing the United States up to $44 billion every year, from the forest fires of the Arctic or the Amazon, to the sandstorms and the droughts in the Middle East or the Sahel, and from the small island states and coastal communities that are fraying around the edges, to the Himalayan communities where women and girls spend more time collecting firewood than they did when this convention was born. Right across the planet, when the land suffers, so too do the people. Yet if we act with a sense of urgency and ambition, that the same land holds a credible number of solutions that we are all looking for. Solutions that will let people thrive, not just survive. And I believe everyone in this room and beyond is committed to that. To my mind, we can do three things to step up the ambition, speeds, and results of our action. First, let's try to move out of our silos, our individuality, that constrain us and our ambition. Cooperation and action that delivers multiple benefits must be a priority for all of us. For example, we know that 820 million people are still going hungry, and that crop yields are dropping as demand for food is set to increase by 50% in the coming decades. Restoring 150 million hectares of farmland could feed 200 million more people every year. At the same time, it would provide greater resilience and over 30 billion a year in increased income for small stakeholders, and sink an additional 2 gigatons of carbon dioxide a year. Second, let's deploy and invest our resources wisely. A few days ago, the UN Global Compact and the Italian energy company Enel announced the first general purpose bond linked to the SDGs. It raised $1.5 billion. That means it was 3 times oversubscribed. It certainly signals a strong demand, and we should encourage more companies to follow suit. It is all great news until you realize that land degradation is costing us trillions of dollars every year and adding to the very emission problem the bond is trying to solve. We must make the investments in this land degradation, particularly in our low-income countries, to stop the preventable losses. If we restore the land, we put our investments into nature-based solutions that we know will work, that deliver for UNCCD, but also for the nationally determined contributions under the UNFCCC, and let nature and biodiversity flourish. The third, build more innovative partnerships to scale up the impact of individual and collective action. Look at the tea growers the Executive Secretary just mentioned. They are expanding restoration techniques. In India, over 500,000 tea workers are working with Trustia to transform their farms and their futures. In turn, Trustia is working with the GEF, UN Environment, and the Rainforest Alliance to scale up impact across 4 countries and improve consumer choices around the world. While land restoration and increased yields are contributing to national commitments on poverty, biodiversity, and climate change, it's exactly the kind of homegrown, joined-up thinking that has allowed our host country to be one of the world's fastest-growing economies and still slash poverty by over 40%. It's a very concrete demonstration of why, if you act, you don't have to choose between social, economic, and environmental progress. In each of our communities and each of our countries, we can and we must have all of them in an integrated response to the challenges that we face today. And that's why I'm delighted that this COP is urging each party and each stakeholder to take bolder action on a much bigger scale. But it also aligns so closely with those 3 drivers: to break down the silos, to invest wisely in sustainable management of resources and land restoration, and is building up the partnerships that will accelerate the urgency of the change that we need. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we no longer have the luxury of spending the next 10 years debating the targets. We have 2 weeks to move our common agenda in the right direction to bend the curve on a planet of less than 2 degrees towards action and impact. We can start with one opportunity, one child, Daphne, one woman, one man, one tea farmer, one business, one land restoration project. Then we scale it up, speed it up, join it up. It is in these critical times that our individual and collective responsibilities will be needed now, even more than they ever have been. It's a massive effort, but together we can lift and achieve the aspirations of the climate agenda. I thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your message and giving a clarion call to everyone that it is time to actually convert our ideas into action and intent into impact. And even small steps are going to be making a huge difference. We need to come together, collaborate, and build partnerships. And now, ladies and gentlemen, inviting another world leader, the Honorable Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, who's been the Prime Minister for more than 18 years, and he stands extremely passionate about realization of the Sustainable Development Goals and also the global environmental governance. He, ladies and gentlemen, is also an authority on the politics of climate change. I request Excellency Dr. Ralphie Gonsalves, the Honorable Prime Minister of St. Vincent and Grenadines, to address this August gathering.
Madam Chairperson, my dear friend, the distinguished Prime Minister of India, our sister Amina from the United Nations, our brother Ibrahim from the UNCCD, our Minister of the Environment and Climate Change from India, other distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I first of all would like to say how happy I am to be here in India. I also want to indicate, just in case you think that someone who is Prime Minister for 19 years runs some dictatorship, that we have elections every 5 years. And I've just been winning them. I want also to see if I can add some value to what has been said already. And accordingly, I want to adopt and call my own the speeches which have all been made here this morning. Very informative, very interesting, and very forward-looking speeches. And since I adopt all the speeches and call them my own, I should simply sit down. But I've come all the way from the Caribbean, so you expect me to say something a little more. Desertification has been authoritatively identified as the greatest environmental challenge of our time. And climate change is making it far worse. Both climatic variations and human activities have caused, engendered, or facilitated land degradation in arid, semi-arid, and dry subhumid areas, which in turn have resulted in extraordinary misery, human suffering, and extreme poverty. The veritable two horsemen of the apocalypse, land degradation and climate change, undoubtedly pose an existential threat to humanity, civilized life and living. The science in these respects definitively and unanswerably details the contours and more of this existential threat and its potentially dire consequences. Yet, the collective responses of nation states globally have not measured up adequately or sufficiently to the enormous tasks at hand so as to obviate disaster. Accordingly, this Conference of Parties, COP14, convened under the aegis of the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, is a seminal staging post in humanity's quest for a better and sustainable condition of our lives, living and production. I want to thank the Executive Secretary of UNCCD, my friend Ibrahim, for inviting me here, and who is doing a fantastic job. And we owe him a tremendous debt of gratitude. India, glorious India, the home of a magnificent civilization of nobility, legitimacy, and authenticity, which strives for a better world for all humanity, and which now hosts this gathering of the convention's participants, provides the context, the backdrop, and wise leadership to frame COP14 as path-breaking, as epoch-making, in the arresting of land degradation, the sequestration of carbon, the rollback of global warming, and the slowdown and reversal of the ravages of anthropogenic climate change, in accord with at least the internationally agreed goals and targets. If we have come to India just to do the usual talking, I think we would have been not making the best use of our time. We heard the tremendous work which is being done in India by the government of Prime Minister Modi in relation to the issues under consideration at this conference, that we, each of us, individually and collectively, must resolve ahead of UNGA and all the assessments which were taking place. We must resolve to make this COP14 path-breaking and epoch-making. Each of us, we must reflect and come to that conclusion. And even if you have governments and organizations which are not as enthused as you may be, please be patient and be calm with them, but nevertheless prod them with urgency, because these times are perilous. The presence of our dear friend, the distinguished Prime Minister Modi, fortifies our hope that our future will not be desecrated, that our present will not become enveloped in a debilitating learned helplessness, inertia, and stasis. It is remarkable that India, the largest democracy in the world, works hand in hand with St. Vincent and the Grenadines, which is one of the smallest democracies in the world, and where some countries are inclined towards nativism and unilateralism, India reaches out. And in addition to what it is doing internally, it is making an important difference globally. And I want to thank Prime Minister Modi for his remarkable work in both respects. I just want to say this parenthetically, you're probably aware that St. Vincent and the Grenadines has become the smallest country ever to win the right at the General Assembly to sit on the Security Council, the United Nations. And I want to thank the Prime Minister for the tremendous support that India gave to our campaign. And we will begin sitting from January the 1st next year until the end of 2021. And we intend to use our position on the Security Council to address the security consequences of climate change and land degradation. The trilogy of international conventions focusing respectively on biodiversity, land degradation, and climate change ought always to be viewed as an integrated whole, since each is inextricably connected with the others. And since we want to make this conference epoch-making and path-breaking, we have to be truthful and honest. We have to accept that much of the international community, too often considered UNCCD, despite its seminal importance, as a kind of proverbial unwanted offspring without legitimate paternity and undeserving of proper maintenance. You know, when we create our children, when we make them, the old distinction as to whether you're born in wedlock and out of wedlock no longer exists. But we have created UNCCD, and we don't quite treat it as legitimate, and we don't quite help it to be properly maintained so that it can survive and develop and carry out its mandate. We don't do that to our children. I don't think we should do that to the UNCCD. But despite the fact that the UNCCD has been treated in less than a wholesome manner, the truth is that land and its protection from rapacious degradation constitute the core upon which rest the life-sustaining pillars of water, food, forests, shelter, clothing, and energy. So that let us bring UNCCD to the center stage. It is not a sideshow. It is the fulcrum of humanity's main event. The recent global controversy regarding the veritable fires of Babylon in the Amazon is a poignant reminder of the importance of our land and our forests. So land in its bewildering complexities go hand in hand with biodiversity and climate change. Thus, more than ever, the voices of the international community must ring out loud with the necessity and desirability of land degradation neutrality, its targets and measures. We have accepted these. Enwrapped in all this are the vital issues touching and concerning poverty, infrastructural development, bushfires, deforestation, unsustainable agricultural practices, coastal erosion, pollution, natural disasters, the efficacious application of science and technology, capacity building and education, and a robust legislative and regulatory framework. All of these things demand substantial resource allocations. Look, they're not going to come from countries which can barely feed their populations. Their resources have to come from countries which have the more developed economies, which have a history of relationship with poorer countries. And the resources, if we are serious with what we agreed upon, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals adopted in September 2015 at the General Assembly of the United Nations, it is agreed that we must have a partnership. And if we're going to have a partnership, we can't seriously expect that those who, for a variety of historical reasons, are impoverished, that they're the ones who must bear the greater burden, when in fact they have already suffered through colonialism, through imperialism. People don't like to hear these words, but we have to be honest and truthful with one another. If we're going to have not a confrontation, but a conversation as to what is necessary and desirable. So, we need substantial resources. We don't want to hear the pledges when those who make the pledges do not really mean them. And it's a case of taking the fool a little further by having us believe that those pledges are real when they are in fact a mirage. This is one earth that we have. Look, what happens in North Africa affects migration and security issues in Europe. It is in everybody's interest that these matters be efficaciously addressed. There is nowhere else for us to hide. Of course, in this partnership, it is also our responsibility in the less developed countries to mainstream land and land development into the overall development, sustainable development processes, so that we don't get a free pass. We have our own obligations and our own responsibilities. It is an often mistakenly held belief, in fact a serious misconception, that the UNCCD has little or nothing to do with small island developing states, because deserts are the province of continental Africa and Asia, but not of the islands, for example, in the Caribbean and the Pacific. The truth is that land degradation and drought affect all and sundry places. We have heard the examples given by Amina. We have heard them by Ibrahim. We have heard from the minister, the distinguished minister from India. Look, Haiti is part of a Caribbean island, and it is a proverbial poster child for historical land degradation, which has led to much impoverishment of an extraordinary nation, the land of the heroic black Jacobins. But you know, many persons say that Haiti They're responsible for all what is happening there themselves. But when you take into account that when the Haitian Revolution established the state of Haiti, defeated colonialism, slaves, the first successful slave rebellion in history, the departing colonial power, France, subsequently imposed reparations from the very slaves, the ex-slaves, for they having freed themselves. And they had to make those payments for over 100 years. Those are realities. And when you see Haiti, we have to make sure that the international agencies, the developed countries, and especially those who have a historic responsibility in relation to Haiti, seek to explore a genuine partnership for the correction of historic wrongs and for assisting us in developing a better future. Additional to the host of factors, natural and man-made, which have historically degraded the land in the Caribbean islands, there is currently the challenge of the annual appearance in our seas and on our beaches of the sargassum seaweed, which threatens to despoil our lands and suffocate our tourism. This threat demands the urgent attention of UNCCD and its Secretariat. This matter has to be put at the international level, the issue of the sargassum seaweed. Much of the land degradation in small island developing states is directly related to and caused by climate change. And we know the issues: global warming, the rise of the level of the sea, the battering of the coastal areas, the damage to our rivers and their banks, landslides and deforestation, horrendous hurricanes and storms of increasing frequency and ferocity. They're all connected with climate change, to which our SIDS contribute little or nothing. In domestic law, if you have a nuisance which comes from your land onto my land, and it could be a nuisance by noise, by water, it could be any fact which constitutes a nuisance in law, you have to pay for the loss and damage which I suffer. In this world, the situation is really cockeyed. We don't contribute anything of any significance at all to climate change. You do all what you want to do. I'm talking about developed economies, cause damage to us, and then all you want to do is to provide SOPs. I am advising, not in any confrontational manner, that all of us have to work together at this. Otherwise, we are going to come to grief. We have seen it happen before, and it's going to happen on a much larger scale. We must not allow short-sighted leaders of powerful countries not to recognize the truth of what I'm speaking here today in New Delhi. Two years ago, hurricanes and storms lashed Dominica and Barbuda, Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, St. Martin's, and Anguilla. This year, there is the destruction and tremendous loss of lives on two islands in the archipelagic state of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Immediate support is required urgently to the people of the Bahamas for relief, recovery, and reconstruction. I want this message to ring out loudly at COP14. A lot of people are dead, and these two islands have to start from scratch. We in CARICOM are actively in solidarity with the Bahamas, but without substantial extra regional support, the people of the Bahamas are going to take a long, long time to recover. Our islands cannot truly survive if global warming exceeds 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. And we are on course for much more than that. These are perilous times. A succession of leaders of religion, politics, science, business, and public administration have wisely advised over the recent decades, particularly since the Rio Summit of 1992, that the unsustainable extraction of resources from our lands and seas by a rapacious economic system hell-bent on private accumulation and profit, without regard for humanity as a whole, cannot continue. Yet, the international community seems relatively powerless to contain this unwholesome and unsustainable extraction of resources. Look, we got to be serious. We just can't take the pious statements anymore. Meaningful corrective action is required. You know it and I know it. For humanity's survival and sustainable development. I don't believe for 1 minute when I hear people tell me that this or that leader of a big country, or this or that big country, that they don't understand the science of climate change. I don't believe it for 1 moment. They know the science. But they're thinking that if they have another 20 or 30 years, for instance, of fossil fuel, they can strengthen and deepen their hegemony over the world. I don't want you to give anybody a pass to tell them that they don't understand, because it's so simple to understand. It is their interests, their economic interests, which runs counter to their internalizing and understanding of the basic science in this matter. Today, our world faces a bundle of interlocking challenges to be urgently and satisfactorily addressed. Climate change, land degradation, and their consequences. Scarcity of vital resources such as water, energy, and strategic minerals. The growing inequality in the distribution of the Earth's resources. The constant threats to world peace and security. The advances in artificial intelligence and their socioeconomic impact. The aging of the world's population. The organization of the global economic system. The governance arrangements in individual nation states. The growing threat of nativism and unilateralism, and the ongoing quest for among right-thinking persons for unnecessary and desirable multilateralism. That's why we are here. The issues before us today, I reiterate, have assumed unusual and unprecedented seriousness. And they are thus urgent. They're existential to our lives, our living and production. And despite the awesome nature of the challenges, we cannot afford to be pessimistic. There is nowhere to go. We are on Earth. These are not times for lamentations. Therefore, optimism, clear thinking, and concerted action. And I say, all the factors have come together to help us to have such a distinguished leader as Prime Minister Modi to help us in leading this charge. I thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your very passionate and empathetic message, and a message that we all own the responsibility and need to walk the talk in all sincerity and earnesty. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I take the distinct honor of requesting our Prime Minister, the Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi ji, to kindly address this august gathering. A man with a vision and a man on a mission towards creating a beautiful, sustainable planet.
My friend Prime Minister Rav Gonsalves, Srimati Amina ji, Ibrahim Chiao, my minister colleague Prakash Javadekar, Babul Supriyo, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you all to India for the 14th session of the Conference of Parties to the United Nations Convention to combat desertification. I thank the Executive Secretary, Mr. Ibrahim Chiao, for having brought this convention to India. The record registration of this program reflects the global commitment to the task of reversing land degradation. India also looks forward to making an effective contribution as we take over the co-presidency for a 2-year term. Friends, for ages, we in India have always given importance to land. In Indian culture, the earth is held as sacred and treated as a mother. While getting up in morning, when we touch the earth with our feet, we seek forgiveness of Mother Earth by praying, Samudravasane Devi, Parvatastana Mandale, Vishnupatni Namastubhyam, Padasparsam Kshamaswame. Friends, climate and environment impact both biodiversity and land. It is widely accepted that the world is facing the negative impact of climate change. This is seen in a loss of land and plants and animal species facing threats of becoming extinct. Climate change is also leading to land degradation of various kinds, be it due to rise in sea levels and wave action, erratic rainfall and storms, and sandstorms caused by hot temperatures. Ladies and gentlemen, India has hosted global gathering through the COP for all the three conventions. This reflects our commitment to addressing all the three main concerns of the Rio Convention. Going forward, India would be happy to propose initiatives for greater South-South cooperation in addressing issue of climate change, biodiversity, and land degradation. Friends, you will be shocked to know that desertification affects over 2/3 of the countries of the world. This makes a compelling case for action on land front. Combine this with the water crisis facing the world. Because when we address degraded lands, we also address water scarcity. Augmenting water supply, enhancing water recharge, slowing down water runoff, and retaining moisture in the soil are all parts of a holistic land and water strategy. I call upon the leadership of UNCCD to create a global water action agenda which is central to the land degradation neutrality strategy. Friends, restoring the health of land is critical for sustainable development. Today, I reminded of India's NDCs that were submitted at the Paris COP at the UNFCCC. It highlighted India's deep cultural roots of maintaining a healthy balance between land, water, air, trees, and all living beings. Friends, it would make you happy that India has been able to increase its tree cover. Between 2015 to 2017, India's tree and forest cover has been increased by 0.8 million hectares. In India, any diversion of forest land for development purposes has to be compensated by making an equivalent land mass available for afforestation. It is also required a monetary payment of the value of timber which such forest land would have yield. I'm happy to share that only last week, funds amounting to nearly $6 billion US, means 40 to 50,000 crore rupees, have been released to the provincial governments in lieu of such diversion for development of forest lands. My government had launched a program to double the income of farmers by increasing crop yield through various measures. This includes land restoration and micro irrigation. We are working with the motto of per drop, more crop. At the same time, we are also focusing on zero budget natural farming. We have also introduced a scheme to determine the soil quality of each of the farms and are issuing soil health cards to farmers. This enables them to grow right type of crops, fertilizers, and use the right quantity of water. So far, about 217 million soil health cards have been distributed. We are increasing the use of biofertilizers and reducing the use of pesticides and chemical fertilizers. Water management is another important issue addressed LDN. We have created Jal Shakti Ministry to address all water-related important issues in totality. Recognizing the value of water in all forms, we enforce zero liquid discharge in many industrial processes. The regulatory regime provides for treatment of wastewater to a degree that it can be put back into the river system without harming life in water. Friends, I would like to draw your attention to another form of land degradation which if not prevented, would be impossible to reverse. This is the menace of plastic waste. Apart from having adverse health implications, this is going to render lands unproductive and unfit for agriculture. My government has announced that India will put an end to single-use plastic in the coming years. We are committed to development of environment-friendly substitutes and also an efficient plastic collection and disposal method. I believe the time has come for even the world to say goodbye to single-use plastic. Friends, human empowerment is closely linked to the state of the environment. Be it harnessing water resources or reducing usage of single-use plastic, the way ahead is behavioral change. It is only when all sections of society decide to achieve something we can see the desired results. We may introduce any number of frameworks, but real change will be powered by teamwork on the ground. India saw this in the case of the Swachh Bharat mission. People from all walks of life took part and ensured sanitation coverage was up from 38% in 2014 to 99% today. I am seeing the same spirit when it comes to ensuring the end of single-use plastic. Youngsters in particular are most supportive and are taking the lead to bring positive change. The media is also playing a very valuable role. Friends, I would like to make further commitment to the global land agenda. I also offer India's support to those countries who may like to understand and adopt some of the LDN strategies that have succeeded in India. From this forum, I would like to announce that India would raise its ambition of the total area that would be restored from its land degradation status from 21 million hectares to 26 million hectares between now and 2030. This will support India's large commitment to achieve an additional carbon sink between 2.5 billion metric tons to 3 billion metric tons through tree cover. We in India take pride in using remote sensing and space technology for multiple applications, including land restoration. India would be happy to help other friendly countries develop land restoration strategies through cost-effective satellite and space technology. In order to further develop a scientific approach and facilitate induction of technology to land degradation issues, we have decided to set up a Center for Excellence in India at the Indian Council of Forestry Research and Education. This agency will actively engage to promote South-South cooperation with those who may wish to access knowledge, technology, and training of manpower to address land degradation related issues. Friends, I understand that an ambitious New Delhi Declaration is being considered. We are all aware that the Sustainable Development Goals have to be achieved by 2030, of which attainment of L&D is also a part. I wish you well as you deliberate further towards proposing a global strategy for land degradation neutrality. I would end by saying a very popular prayer from one of our oldest scriptures. Om Dayoho Shantihi, Antariksham Shantihi. The word Shanti does not only refer to peace or the antidote to violence. Here, it refers to prospering. Everything has a law of being, a purpose, and everybody has to fulfill that purpose. The fulfillment of that purpose is prosperity. Om Dayoho Shantihi, Antariksha Shantihi. So, it says, may the skies, heaven and space prosper. Prithvihi Shantihi, Apaha Shantihi, Aushadaya Shantihi, Manaspataya Shantihi, Visve Devaha Shantihi, Brahma Shantihi. May Mother Earth prosper. This includes the flora and fauna with whom we share our planet. May they prosper. May every drop of water prosper. May the divine gods prosper. Sarva Shantihi, Shantireva Shantihi, Same Shantiredahi. May everybody prosper. May I also be blessed with prosperity. Om Shantihi, Shantihi, Shantihi. Om prosperity, prosperity is prosperity. The thought and philosophy of our ancestors was all embracing and filled with a great thought. They realized the true relationship between me and we. They knew that prosperity of me can only be through prosperity of we. When our ancestors said we, they did not just mean their family or community or even just humans. It includes the sky, water, plants, trees, everything. It is also very important to know the order in which they are praying for peace and prosperity. They pray for the sky, the earth, the water, the plants. These are things that sustain us. This is what we call the environment. If this prosper, then I prosper. This was their mantra. Even today, this is an extremely relevant thought. With this spirit, I once again congratulate you for taking part in this summit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister, sir, for your very beautiful thoughts and message wishing the prosperity of all individuals, of all life on earth. Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister, for guiding us. Thank you very much for your very inspiring and motivating message. Ladies and gentlemen, we once again thank the Honorable Prime Minister for, in fact, dignifying and magnifying this event with his gracious presence and his message. Thanking once again to all the distinguished dignitaries here on the dais. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we close this high-level segment of COP14. And we hope that
powerful, informative and thought-provoking address by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the plenary session and opening ceremony of this high-level segment of COP14 of the UNCCD now comes to a close. The Prime Minister interacting with everyone on the dais with great warmth and affection. With these images, we now take your leave and wish you a wonderful day ahead.
तो आप अभी तक देख रहे थे सीधा प्रसारण ग्रेटर नोएडा के इंडिया एक्सपो मार्ट से, जहां COP14 सम्मेलन को प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी संबोधित कर रहे थे। उन्होंने साफ तौर पर भारत की प्रतिबद्धताएं, एक बार जो भारत की जो प्रतिबद्धता है उसको फिर से संकल्प लिया और बताया कि किस तरह से भारत इस पूरे मुद्दे पर आगे बढ़ रहा है, किस तरह से प्रकृति को, किस तरह से पर्यावरण को संरक्षित करने की कोशिश सिर्फ आज से नहीं। प्रधानमंत्री ने साफ तौर पर बार बार कहा कि जो हमारे आदि पुरुष थे उस जमाने से ही, उस समय से ही जो प्रकृति का संरक्षण है वो चला रहा है और भारत इसमें आज भी अगुवा की भूमिका निभा रहा है, एक लीडर की भूमिका निभा रहा है। और प्रधानमंत्री ने साफ तौर पर एक तरह से आह्वान किया विश्व बिरादरी का, कहा ग्लोबल वाटर एक्शन एजेंडा होना चाहिए UNCCD का नेतृत्व है वो मिलकर इसको आगे बढ़ाए। इस पर इन विषयों पर प्रधानमंत्री के संभाषण पर चर्चा करने के लिए
In fact, Nikhil, Prime Minister Modi also said that India would be happy to propose initiatives for greater cooperation in addressing issues of climate change, biodiversity and land degradation as well. In fact, also acknowledging that climate change was leading to land degradation of various kinds. And yes, he was in fact also acknowledging and emphasizing once again that the challenges that lie ahead of India and the rest of the member nations, and how the targets really need to become national targets and they need to be moved into that direction. Let's take
ढेर सारे जो कदम हैं जो अभी तक सरकार ने उठाए हैं उसके बारे में विस्तार से
he highlighted all those as well.
जी बिल्कुल.
Yes, in fact, let's take comments from a guest present here in the studio. Mr. Pandey continues to be with us. Mr. Pandey, when Prime Minister Modi says that India will continue to propose initiatives for greater cooperation. Okay, all right, Mr. Pandey, we'll just come back to you. Let's take these shots live once again. Prime Minister Modi leaving the venue there after addressing the gathering at the conference of the parties. Of course, there with the UN Deputy Secretary. Prime Minister Modi has just addressed that gathering and leaving the venue along with the Environment Minister Prakash Javadekar.
Nancy